The Whitewash, Gold Edition, by Tyson Jay Palmer. Prologue: The Divine Light. This could be the beginning of the end, or perhaps where a new story starts to mend. My heart trembles within my chest, seeking your light, seeking your rest. You are here, you are near, even when darkness brings fear. In the beginning, there was light. Light that had created worlds, sculpted mountains, filled oceans, and breathed life into every living thing. The same light that had promised never to leave or forsake his creation. The people of Earth had nearly forgotten this light. They built their towers of glass and steel, worshipped idols of technology and comfort, and walked through life with eyes downcast, missing the glory that surrounded them. Until the day everything changed. They looked up to the sky one ordinary Tuesday afternoon and beheld a radiance unlike anything witnessed before. A great white light that washed over the world, penetrating every shadow, illuminating every secret place. It was beautiful and terrifying, gentle yet powerful, divine contradiction that left humanity forever changed. Some called it the shift, others named it the awakening. But for those with eyes to truly see and hearts to understand, it was the fulfillment of an ancient promise, the return of something pure to a world that had grown dark. We looked up to the sky. We beheld the light divine. A radiance that transformed all it touched, a presence we had forgotten too much. We didn't stay long in our old ways, never even saying our goodbyes. Look to the heavens, lift your eyes. The promise of eternal life never dies. We nearly perished in darkness deep, but in his mercy, our souls he'll keep. Rise above earthly fears, find the truth that perseveres. Rise above doubt and pain, truth and love eternal remain. You will know the Saviour's touch. Grace abundant, love so much, truth and light intertwined, healing for a troubled mind. In those first moments after the light appeared, the world seemed to hold its breath. Birds fell silent, winds calmed, the constant hum of human activity, cars, planes, machines, faded to nothing. The silence was deafening, a holy pause before everything changed. Then came the whispers. My head spins with confusion. I struggle to understand, but we can soar on wings of faith and escape the enemy's hand. We can find life eternal, hope that never ends. Look to the Son of Glory, he will set you free. Look to the promised Savior, in him you'll find his peace. I've been a prisoner to sin and death, now these chains release. These bonds are broken forever. By the cross I hold inside, a heart renewed, vision restored. In his truth, I now abide. I see the signs he promised. I see faith growing in your eyes. Look to the Son of Glory, a new dawn begins to rise. Part 1: The Awakening. Chapter 1: The Glorious Light. Maya Bennett pressed her palm against the cold window of Rose's diner, tracing patterns in the condensation while watching the colorless world outside. 23 days had passed since the shift, the moment that blinding white light had washed over everything, changing the world in ways no one fully understood. This could be the end, she whispered to herself, recalling lyrics from one of her favorite worship songs. Or maybe just the beginning of something new. The melody caught in her throat as she remembered how music had once filled her life, before the silence came. The air in the diner felt heavy, weighted with unspoken tension. Outside, the landscape appeared drained of color, as if someone had painted the world in muted grays and washed out browns beneath a sky that hung too close, almost suffocating. The once vibrant town of Cedar Springs looked like an old photograph left too long in the sun. You want another coffee? Maya startled at the voice behind her. Liam Rodriguez, his dark eyes watchful and serious, slid into the booth across from her, pushing a steaming mug toward her hands. At 25, he was only a few years older than Maya, but responsibility had etched fine lines around his eyes that made him look like he'd lived several lifetimes. Thanks, she murmured, wrapping her fingers around the warm ceramic. Anything new on the radio? Liam shook his head, a lock of dark hair falling across his forehead. Same as yesterday. Static mostly, with occasional fragments, people talking about safe zones, about the changed ones. He lowered his voice. About the others. Maya shivered despite the warm mug in her hands. Everyone remembered the light differently. Some described it as beautiful, a transcendent experience that filled them with peace. Others spoke of terror, of feeling exposed and judged. Maya remembered the silence that followed, the unnatural quiet, as if all creation held its breath in anticipation. Then the whispers had started, and the changes. And the others? Pastor Mike hasn't returned, Liam said quietly, staring into his coffee. I checked the church again this morning. Maya nodded, unsurprised. Half the town had vanished in the days following the shift. Some had fled, packing up their belongings and heading for the cities or the mountains, chasing rumors of safe havens. Others had simply disappeared, like Sarah Jenkins from the coffee shop with her vibrant purple hair and infectious laugh. There one day, gone the next. And then there were those who remained but weren't the same anymore, like old Mr. Henderson from the hardware store. His body still walked the streets of Cedar Springs, but his eyes were empty vessels, reflecting nothing of the kind man who had once handed out candy to neighborhood children. His mouth moved constantly, but no sound emerged, only a silent echo of the whispers that seemed to ride the very air. I found this. Liam reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, leather-bound Bible, its edges worn smooth from years of handling. In Pastor Mike's office, Maya took it carefully, running her fingers over the embossed cross on the cover. She hadn't been much for church before the shift, attending Christmas and Easter services mostly to please her grandmother. But now, with the world unraveling around them, the familiar weight of the book felt like an anchor in a storm. She opened it to where a red ribbon marked the page and read aloud, "And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven." A chill ran down Maya's spine. "Revelation," she whispered. Liam nodded. Chapter 12. Pastor Mike had it marked, with notes in the margin. He leaned closer. Maya, I think he knew something was coming. There are other passages marked too, all about light and darkness, about a final battle. Maya stared at the text, the words swimming before her eyes. Outside, the sky darkened further, though it was barely mid-afternoon. The strange, perpetual twilight that had persisted since the shift seemed to deepen, casting long shadows across the empty street. "We should go," Liam said suddenly, his body tensing as he glanced toward the windows. "It's not safe to stay in one place too long after dark." Maya followed his gaze and felt her heart stutter. Across the street, a figure stood motionless, face tilted upward toward the diner. Even from this distance, she could see the unnatural stillness of its posture, the way it seemed more statue than person. One of the others. "My backpack's in the kitchen," Maya said, sliding out of the booth. "I'll grab it and meet you at the back door." As she moved through the abandoned diner, weaving between empty tables and upturned chairs, Maya clutched the Bible tightly to her chest. The world as she had known it was gone, washed away by that blinding light. What remained was strange and frightening, but deep within, she felt a flicker of something unexpected, hope. We stared up high, beyond the sky, beheld the light that cannot die. We didn't remain the same that day, as his presence showed us the way. Who can stand? Who will rise? When his glory fills the skies. Outside, more shadows gathered, moving with eerie synchronicity through the fading light. Maya grabbed her backpack from beneath the counter, tucking the Bible safely inside before meeting Liam at the back exit. "Ready?" he asked, his hand on the door handle, a rusty pipe wrench gripped in his other hand like a lifeline. Maya nodded, drawing a deep breath. "Ready." Together, they stepped out into the changed world, unaware that their journey was just beginning, a journey that would test their faith, challenge their understanding, and ultimately reveal the true nature of the light that had altered everything. Chapter 2. Eyes to the heavens. Look to the heavens above. Seek the light of divine love. We will not surrender to the night. So lift your eyes toward the light. Though death seemed near at hand, by faith and hope we stand. We faced the darkness, felt its might, but together we'll win this fight. The forest outside Cedar Springs felt different. Maya had hiked these trails countless times before, during summer camps as a child, on environmental science field trips in high school, and on solitary walks when her soul needed quieting. But now, 3 days after fleeing the diner, these familiar woods felt alien. The trees stood too still, their leaves barely rustling despite the wind. The usual woodland symphony of birdsong and insect hums had diminished to occasional, discordant notes. Everything felt watchful, as if the forest itself had developed consciousness, and wasn't particularly pleased with their presence. "Something moved over there," Liam whispered, pointing toward a dense thicket of brambles about 50 yards to their right. Maya froze, her hand instinctively reaching for the small cross pendant hanging at her throat, her grandmother's final gift before passing away last winter. "Animal or other?" "Not sure." Liam shifted the weight of his backpack, the tools inside clinking softly. His forearms, exposed by rolled-up sleeves, bore the evidence of their narrow escape from town, angry red scratches and a darkening bruise shaped vaguely like a handprint. "Let's not stick around to find out." They continued northward, following the twisting tributary of the Clearwater River. Liam had suggested heading for the mountains, where his uncle owned a hunting cabin. It was remote, defensible, and, most importantly, stocked with enough supplies to last them through winter if necessary. Do you think anyone else made it out? Maya asked as they navigated around a fallen oak that blocked their path. The question had plagued her since they'd slipped out of Cedar Springs, watching from the ridge as strange lights moved through the darkened town below. Liam was silent for several paces before answering. I hope so. The Millers had that RV. They were planning to head toward the coast, and Ellie Chen had family in the Northern Territories. He didn't mention what they both knew, that many hadn't escaped at all. The memory of Mr. Henderson's empty eyes still haunted Maya's dreams, along with the strange, synchronized movements of the others as they converged on the diner just as she and Liam had escaped through the back. What do you think they want? Maya asked, her voice barely audible above the gentle gurgle of the river beside them. The others? Liam's expression darkened. I don't know if want is the right word. It's like they are vessels now, empty containers filled with something else. Maya shuddered. During their second night on the trail, they had watched from a concealed position as a group of the others gathered in a moonlit clearing. A dozen of them, men and women of various ages, some still wearing the clothes they had on when the shift occurred, had stood in a perfect circle, faces upturned to the sky. Their mouths moved in unison, forming words neither Maya nor Liam could hear, but they could feel them, vibrations that hummed in their bones and set their teeth on edge. Rise above earthly chains, Maya murmured, recalling the hymn her grandmother had sung during worship. Find the love that remains. Liam glanced at her, a question in his eyes. Something my grandmother used to sing, she explained, about rising above fear, about finding truth and love even in dark times. She hesitated. She was very religious, believed in angels and demons, spiritual warfare, all of it. I always thought it was just, old-fashioned faith. But now you're not so sure, Liam finished for her. Maya nodded. The Bible we found in Pastor Mike's office, there were notes about it, the veil between worlds, about forces that have always been there but that most people couldn't see. She adjusted her backpack, wincing as the strap pressed against a tender spot on her shoulder. What if the light didn't change the world? What if it just revealed what was already there? Liam considered this as they walked, his brow furrowed in concentration. Unlike Maya, who had drifted from her grandmother's faith as she entered adolescence, Liam had never been religious. His parents had been practical people, his father a mechanic, his mother a nurse, who believed in what they could see and fix with their own hands. The concept of unseen realms had always seemed like fantasy to him, yet he couldn't deny the evidence of his own eyes. The others moved in ways that defied natural explanation. The whispers that sometimes rippled through the air carried words in languages he'd never heard but somehow understood in the marrow of his bones. Promises of power, of transcendence, of becoming something greater than human. There's a clearing up ahead, Liam said, changing the subject. We should stop and refill our water bottles before pressing on. The river splits about 2 miles north, and we'll need to follow the western fork to reach the mountains. Maya nodded, grateful for his practical focus. Whatever philosophical questions plagued them about the nature of their changed world, the immediate needs of survival took precedence: water, food, shelter, safety. As they entered the small clearing, sunlight filtering through the canopy in dappled patterns, Maya felt a momentary peace settle over her. The space was beautiful, wildflowers nodded in a gentle breeze, and the river widened into a calm pool before continuing its journey downstream. For a brief moment, it was possible to forget the horror they had fled, to imagine this was simply a hiking trip on a perfect autumn day. Liam knelt by the water's edge, pulling out their bottles and the small filtration system he'd grabbed from the sporting goods store before they fled town. Maya settled on a sun-warmed rock, pulling out the Bible and turning its pages thoughtfully. She found herself drawn to Isaiah, to words that seemed to speak directly to their situation. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness a light has dawned. Liam, she called, listen to this. The rest of her words died in her throat as a movement on the opposite bank caught her attention. A deer emerged from the trees, a young doe with dappled flanks and delicate legs. Under normal circumstances, the sight would have delighted Maya, who had always loved wildlife. But these were not normal circumstances, and the doe was not as it should be. Its eyes reflected the light wrongly, not with the warm brown of a healthy animal but with an opalescent sheen that shifted colors as it moved. Its head twitched in small, jerking movements, and its mouth worked silently, mimicking the same pattern they had seen in the others. Liam, Maya whispered, not taking her eyes from the creature. Don't move. He froze, water dripping from the filter in his hands as he slowly turned his head. The doe was staring directly at them now, its unnatural eyes fixed with terrible intelligence on their position. It's been, Maya couldn't find the right word, changed, like the people. The doe took a step forward, its hoof breaking the surface of the water with barely a ripple. Then another step. Its movements were too precise, too deliberate for a wild animal. We need to go, Liam said under his breath, slowly recapping one water bottle and slipping it into his pack. Now, as if triggered by his words, the doe's head snapped up, its neck extending at an impossible angle. From its throat came a sound no deer had ever made, a high, keening wail that echoed through the clearing and beyond, carrying for what seemed like miles through the still forest. A calling, a signal. Maya and Liam ran, abandoning the remaining water bottle as they crashed through the underbrush, away from the clearing, away from the river. Behind them, the wailing continued, joined moments later by other voices, some animal, some chillingly human, from all directions. They ran until their lungs burned and their legs trembled, finally collapsing in the hollow beneath an ancient oak whose massive roots created a natural shelter. Gasping for breath, they pressed close together, listening as the chorus of wails gradually faded into the distance. "They are hunting us," Maya whispered when she could finally speak. "All of them, people, animals, they're all connected somehow." Liam nodded grimly, his face pale beneath a sheen of sweat. "The river plan won't work now. They'll be watching the water. So what do we do?" He pulled out the crumpled map he'd taken from the diner, studying it in the fading light. "We go up," he said finally. "There's an old fire lookout tower on this ridge." He pointed to a spot marked with a small triangle. "If we can reach it before dark, we'll have a defensible position and a view of the surrounding area." Maya nodded, trying to ignore the trembling in her limbs and the fear clutching at her heart. She reached again for her grandmother's cross, drawing strength from its familiar contours. "Even though I walk through the darkest valley," she recited quietly, "I will fear no evil, for you are with me." Liam met her gaze, and for a moment, his practical skepticism gave way to something else, a recognition of their need for something greater than themselves to face what lay ahead. "Your rod and your staff," he continued, surprising her with his knowledge of the psalm, "they comfort me." Together, they rose and continued their journey, eyes lifted toward the heights, seeking refuge as the shadows lengthened around them. Chapter 3: The Inner Light. My mind whirls with confusion. All I knew seems upside down. But we'll soar on wings of faith. Beyond this earthly ground, we could find eternal life. Never surrender to despair. Look to the Son of Promise. Find freedom in His care. Look to the Savior's kindness. His peace will fill your soul. I've been a captive of darkness. Now His light makes me whole. The fire lookout tower loomed against the twilight sky, a solitary sentinel perched atop the ridge. It had taken them the remainder of the day to reach it, scrambling up steep slopes and picking their way through boulder fields where a single misstep could mean a broken ankle, or worse. Now, as the last streaks of purple faded from the horizon, Maya leaned against the weathered railing of the observation platform, 70 feet above the forest floor. Below them, the woodland stretched in all directions, a dark sea occasionally broken by the meandering silver ribbon of the river. In the distance, the lights of Cedar Springs glimmered, but wrong somehow, pulsing with a rhythm that made her eyes hurt if she looked too long. "Found some supplies," Liam announced, emerging from the small cabin that crowned the tower. "Canned food, matches, a first aid kit, even a battery-powered radio, though I can't pick up any stations." "The ranger left in a hurry," Maya observed, pointing to the overturned chair and scattered logbooks inside. "Probably when the shift happened." Liam nodded, setting down an armful of canned goods on the small table. "At least they left the essentials behind. We should be able to stay here a few days, get our bearings." "And then what?" Maya asked, the question that had been haunting her finally spilling out. "Where do we go, Liam? What's even left out there?" He didn't answer immediately, busying himself with examining the cans, beans, corn, peaches in syrup, avoiding her gaze. When he finally looked up, the waning light cast deep shadows across his features. "I don't know," he admitted. "Before all this, I was just a mechanic with some community college courses and too many unpaid bills. I don't have answers for whatever this is." He gestured broadly at the transformed world beyond the tower. Maya sank onto the wooden bench built into the wall, suddenly overwhelmed by the enormity of their situation. The adrenaline that had carried her through the past days was fading, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion and a hollow sense of loss. "I keep hearing them," she whispered, pressing her palms against her temples. "The whispers, even when we're nowhere near the others, I can hear them, in my dreams, in quiet moments. Promising things." Liam set down the can he was examining and moved to sit beside her, close enough for comfort but still maintaining a respectful distance. "What kind of things?" A better world, freedom from pain and fear, transcendence. She looked up at him, her eyes reflecting the first stars appearing in the darkening sky. Sometimes it's tempting, Liam, to just give in, to stop running. Those who surrendered in town, they are not free, Liam reminded her gently. Whatever happened to them, whatever they became, they are not themselves anymore. That's not transcendence, it's obliteration. Maya nodded, knowing he was right but still feeling the seductive pull of the whispers at the edges of her consciousness. They had grown stronger since the encounter with the deer, more coherent, more persuasive. My grandmother used to talk about spiritual discernment, she said, reaching for the Bible in her backpack. The ability to distinguish between divine guidance and deception. She said it was like having a light inside you, a connection to truth that helps you recognize lies, no matter how beautiful they sound. And do you have that? This internal light? Liam asked, no mockery in his tone, only genuine curiosity. Maya hesitated. I don't know. I walked away from faith years ago, thought I'd outgrown it, that it was just comforting stories for children and the elderly. She ran her fingers over the Bible's worn cover. But now I wonder if I was wrong, if there's more to it than I understood. She opened the Bible randomly, finding herself in the Gospel of John. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it, she read aloud. The words seemed to hang in the air between them, almost luminous in their simplicity and power. A sound from below interrupted the moment, a metallic scraping against the tower's support struts. Liam was on his feet instantly, moving silently to the edge of the platform. Maya followed, her heart hammering against her ribs as they peered into the gathering darkness. At first, she saw nothing. Then, as her eyes adjusted, she made out a figure at the base of the tower, human-shaped, but moving with the same unnatural precision they had observed in the others. It circled the structure slowly, head tilted upward as if sensing their presence despite the height and darkness. It found us, Maya breathed, fighting to keep her voice steady. How did it find us? Liam shook his head, his expression grim. I don't know, but it won't be alone for long. As if confirming his words, a second figure emerged from the tree line, then a third. They moved with eerie coordination, forming a perimeter around the tower's base. Can they climb? Maya asked, eyeing the single ladder that provided access to the platform. I don't know, Liam repeated, frustration edging his voice. We don't know what they are capable of, what limitations they have, if any. Maya turned away from the edge, unable to watch the growing assembly below. Her gaze fell on the Bible, still open to John's Gospel, and a phrase caught her eye. You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hidden. A strange calm settled over her, cutting through her fear like sunlight through fog. They are drawn to light, she said, the realization crystallizing in her mind. Not physical light, spiritual light. Awareness, understanding. Liam looked at her quizzically. What do you mean? The deer found us when I started reading scripture aloud. These others found us when we were discussing faith, discernment. Maya's words came faster as the pieces connected. They are hunting consciousness, Liam, not just bodies to occupy, but minds that are awakening to what's really happening. She moved back to the railing, looking down at the growing circle of others with new understanding. They are afraid of what we might become if we embrace the true light. Liam studied her face in the deepening twilight. And what exactly would that be? Witnesses, Maya said simply. People who can see what's happening on both sides of the veil. People who might fight back. Below them, one of the others began to climb. Part 2 The Revelation. Chapter 4 Fleeing the Darkness. I've been waiting in this emptiness. Time stretches into eternity. My past pursues me relentlessly, catching up with alarming speed. Press the reset button of mercy. Begin again with grace divine. Perhaps this time we'll follow the path that was always thine. Press reset through his forgiveness. Start anew with a second chance. We're watching as the world transforms. While we seek to survive this dance, time flees before us, slipping away. Pack your heart with eternal treasures. It's time to find our true home, where everlasting peace measures. They escaped the tower in the darkest hour of night, when even the stars seemed to have retreated behind a veil of clouds. The others had begun climbing, one after another, their movements mechanical yet unnervingly graceful. Liam had barricaded the hatch with the small metal desk from the cabin, but the barrier wouldn't hold for long. There's a maintenance ladder on the south side, he had whispered, pulling Maya away from the hatch as it shuddered beneath the impact of something heavy. It's meant for repairs, not regular use. They might not know about it. Now, as they slipped through the forest, the tower receding behind them, Maya felt the whispers intensify, no longer at the edges of her consciousness but pressing insistently against her thoughts. Join us, become more, transcend your limitations. Why run when evolution awaits? She stumbled, her foot catching on an exposed root, and Liam's hand shot out to steady her. His touch was warm, human, grounding, a stark contrast to the cold, seductive whispers that promised a different kind of transformation. You okay? He asked, concern etching lines between his brows. Maya nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The truth was, she wasn't okay. The whispers were growing stronger, more coherent, more difficult to resist. They no longer seemed like external voices, but thoughts arising from within her own mind, reasonable, compelling arguments for surrender. They continued southward, away from Cedar Springs and deeper into the national forest that covered much of the region. Dawn found them huddled beneath a rocky overhang as rain began to fall, gentle at first, then with increasing intensity until the world became a blur of grey sheets and the drumming on leaves drowned out all other sounds. We should rest, Liam said, setting down his pack and pulling out a thermal blanket. At least until the rain stops. It'll cover our tracks. Maya sank onto the relatively dry ground, her muscles aching from the night's exertions. She hadn't slept properly since they fled the diner 3 days ago, just brief snatches of restless slumber interrupted by nightmares and the ever-present whispers. Here, Liam handed her a protein bar and a bottle of water. You need to eat something. She accepted the offerings mechanically, suddenly aware of the hollow emptiness in her stomach. How long had it been since she'd felt hungry? The basic human needs of her body seemed distant somehow, secondary to the spiritual and existential threat they faced. As she ate, Liam pulled out the map again, studying it intently despite the poor light. There's an old mining town about 15 miles southwest of here, he said, tracing the route with his finger. Silverton. It was mostly a tourist attraction before the shift, restored historical buildings, a museum. But it's isolated, defensible. Might be a good place to regroup. Maya nodded absently, her attention drawn to the rhythmic pattern of rain striking the forest floor just beyond their shelter. There was something almost hypnotic about it, a natural counterpoint to the artificial rhythm of the whispers. I've been thinking about what you said, Liam continued, folding the map. About them hunting consciousness, awareness. It makes a kind of sense. He paused, gathering his thoughts. The others we've seen, they move like they are being controlled, right? But what if it's not about control exactly? What if it's about surrender? Maya looked up, curious despite her exhaustion. What do you mean? Before all this, I worked with machines, cars, mostly. When a part fails, you replace it. But sometimes, it's not about failure but incompatibility. His eyes took on a distant quality as he formulated the idea. What if the light revealed something that's always been there, some other layer of reality, and the others are people who've adapted to it, surrendered their humanity to become compatible with whatever exists on the other side? The concept sent a chill through Maya that had nothing to do with the damp, cool air. And those who resist the change are hunted, she murmured. Because we're, what, a threat to the adaptation process? Liam nodded slowly. It's just a theory, but it would explain why they seem so focused on us, on other survivors who haven't changed. Maya drew her knees to her chest, wrapping her arms around them as she considered his words. If you're right, then what we're facing isn't just physical survival. It's maintaining our humanity against something that wants to rewrite us. The rain continued to fall, creating a curtain of water that isolated their small shelter from the wider world. In this moment of relative safety, exhaustion finally overcame Maya's resistance, and she felt her eyelids growing heavy. You should sleep, Liam said, noticing her drooping shoulders. I'll keep watch. Wake me in a couple of hours, she murmured, already drifting. You need rest too. As consciousness slipped away, the whispers rose once more, but now they were countered by something else, a different kind of voice, quieter but somehow more substantial. It spoke not of transcendence or evolution, but of endurance, of holding fast to what made them human. Rise above the darkness closing in. Find the truth that dwells within. Rise above fear's cold embrace. Find strength in mercy, hope, and grace. You will know the Saviour's gentle touch, truth and love that means so much. His light will guide through darkest night. His word reveals what's true and right. In her dreams, Maya stood at a crossroads. One path led toward a brilliant, cold light that promised liberation from pain, fear, and limitation, but demanded the surrender of her essential self. The other path was darker, strewn with obstacles, promising struggle and pain, but also the preservation of something precious and irreplaceable. The dream shifted, and she found herself in her grandmother's kitchen, sunlight streaming through gingham curtains as the old woman kneaded bread dough with strong, capable hands. You remember what I told you about discernment, sweet girl? Her grandmother asked, not looking up from her work. That it's about distinguishing truth from lies, Maya answered, surprised by the clarity of the memory. That's part of it. Her grandmother's hands never stopped moving, shaping the formless dough into something that would provide nourishment. But it's also about recognizing what's worth preserving, what must be fought for. The enemy doesn't always come with horns and a pitchfork. Sometimes he comes bearing gifts, offering exactly what you think you want. How do you know the difference? Her grandmother finally looked up, flour dusting her cheeks and her eyes alight with wisdom accumulated through decades of faithful living. By their fruits, you shall know them. Does it bring life or death? Does it preserve what makes us human, our capacity to love, to sacrifice, to choose, or does it diminish those things? She tore off a piece of dough and handed it to Maya. Here, feel this. It's alive, you know. The yeast is working even now, unseen but powerful. That's how truth works in us, quietly, from the inside out, bringing transformation that doesn't destroy but fulfills our nature. Maya awakened with a start, the dream still vivid in her mind. Liam was beside her, his back against the rock wall and his eyes fixed on the forest beyond their shelter. The rain had stopped, and slanted afternoon sunlight filtered through the trees, transforming raindrops on leaves into countless tiny prisms. How long was I asleep? She asked, sitting up and rubbing her stiff neck. About 4 hours, Liam admitted. You needed it? She started to protest. He needed rest too, but stopped as something caught her attention. A sound in the distance, faint but distinct. Music. Do you hear that? She asked, straining to identify the melody. Liam tilted his head, listening. Sounds like hymns? Church music? Maya nodded, a flutter of hope rising in her chest. The sound was distant but unmistakable, human voices raised in song, carried on the breeze from somewhere to the south. Others wouldn't sing, she said with growing excitement. They whisper, they mimic, but they don't create music. Liam was already gathering their belongings, a new energy in his movements. If there are people singing, they are still human, and if they are singing hymns, they might understand what's happening. Maya finished for him. They might have answers. They moved with renewed purpose, following the sound as it grew gradually stronger. The forest thinned as they descended into a small valley, giving way to occasional clearings and eventually to the remains of an old logging road, overgrown but still passable. The singing led them to a small chapel nestled against the base of a steep hillside. Built of rough-hewn logs with a simple cross mounted above the door, it looked like something from another century, a sanctuary untouched by the modern world even before the shift had changed everything. A dozen or so people were gathered inside and on the small porch, their voices raised in a hymn Maya vaguely recognized from her childhood. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. That saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Maya and Liam approached cautiously, aware of the vulnerability of their position if this proved to be a trap. But the singing continued, pure and heartfelt, with none of the artificial perfection that characterized the others. An elderly woman noticed them first, her weathered face breaking into a smile as she nudged the man beside her, a tall, thin figure with silver hair and the unmistakable collar of a pastor. He turned, raising a hand in greeting, then stepped down from the porch to meet them. Welcome, travelers, he said, his voice deep and resonant. I'm Pastor Thomas. You've found Haven Chapel. Maya felt tears spring to her eyes unexpectedly. After days of running, of hiding, of fighting against the whispers that sought to unmake her very self, the simple human warmth in his greeting was overwhelming. I'm Maya, she managed. This is Liam. We've come from Cedar Springs. The pastor's expression sobered. Cedar Springs fell 3 days ago. We've had refugees arriving since then, those who managed to escape before the change took hold completely. You know about the change? Liam asked, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly at this confirmation they weren't alone in their understanding. About the others? Pastor Thomas nodded gravely. Come inside. There's food, clean water, and we have much to discuss. He looked between them, his gaze penetrating but kind. The light revealed many things, some beautiful, some terrible, but it did not leave us without guidance. As they followed him toward the chapel, Maya felt the whispers recede further, driven back by the simple power of human connection and shared faith. For the first time since the shift, she felt something like real hope blossoming in her heart. This wasn't the end. It was, as the prologue of their journey had hinted, perhaps just the beginning. Chapter 5 Through the Veil. Your paths, you must carefully choose. Step lightly, make no sound. Pick yourself up when you stumble. Stand firm on solid ground. Watch your steps with vigilance. Don't draw attention near. Pick yourself up with courage. Face what you most fear. Bid farewell to former comforts. To everything you knew. Welcome this new reality, though terrifying and true. Haven Chapel hummed with quiet activity as evening approached. About 20 survivors had found refuge there, drawn by word of mouth, radio transmissions, or simply divine guidance, depending on whom you asked. They were a diverse group, families with wide-eyed children, elderly couples, single adults of various ages, all united by their humanity and their refusal to surrender to the change sweeping across the world. Maya sat at a rough wooden table in what had once been the chapel's small fellowship hall, now converted into a communal dining and meeting space. A steaming bowl of vegetable stew sat before her, its rich aroma making her stomach growl appreciatively. Liam sat beside her, already working through his second helping, the strain of the past days evident in his ravenous appetite. Across from them, Pastor Thomas sipped from a mug of herbal tea, his keen eyes taking their measure. He had listened patiently as they recounted their experiences, the initial shift, the transformation of Cedar Springs, their narrow escape and subsequent journey. Now it was their turn to listen. What you've described matches the experiences of our other refugees, he said, setting down his mug. The light, the whispers, the transformation of people and animals into these others, as you call them. But to understand what's happening, we need to go back much further than the shift. He reached for a well-worn Bible on the table. Throughout Scripture, there are references to a veil that separates the physical world from the spiritual realm. In 2 Corinthians, Paul speaks of a veil that lies over the hearts of unbelievers. In Hebrews, we're told Christ entered through the curtain, another kind of veil, into the Holy of Holies. And when Jesus died, the temple veil was torn in two, symbolizing new access to God's presence. Maya nodded, fragments of Sunday school lessons stirring in her memory. So the light tore the veil between our world and the spiritual world? I believe so, Pastor Thomas confirmed, but not in the way that Christ did, not to enable communion between humanity and God, but to expose us to other spiritual realities that have always existed alongside our own. Spiritual realities, Liam repeated, skepticism evident in his tone despite all he had witnessed. You mean like heaven and hell? Those and others, the pastor replied, unoffended by Liam's doubt. The Bible speaks of principalities and powers, of rulers in heavenly places. The spiritual realm is as complex and varied as our physical one, with its own geography, its own hierarchies, its own conflicts. An older woman approached the table, laying a gentle hand on Pastor Thomas's shoulder. Tell them about Ilara, she suggested, her eyes kind but carrying the haunted look that all survivors shared. The pastor nodded. You should meet her yourselves, he said, rising from the table. She's been studying these phenomena longer than any of us. He led them through the chapel and out a back door, following a narrow path that wound through pine trees toward a small cabin set apart from the main building. Smoke curled from its chimney, and warm light glowed behind curtained windows. Ilara Peterson was a professor of comparative religion and mythology before the shift. Pastor Thomas explained as they walked. She came here 3 years ago after retiring, seeking a quiet place to continue her research. When the light appeared, she was the first to recognize what was happening. He knocked at the cabin door, calling out, Ilara, I've brought the newcomers from Cedar Springs. The door opened to reveal a woman whose age was difficult to determine, somewhere between 60 and 80, with silver hair cropped close to her head and remarkable violet-blue eyes that seemed to look through rather than at them. She wore simple clothing, jeans, a flannel shirt, hiking boots, but carried herself with an undeniable dignity. Come in, she said, her voice soft but clear. I've been expecting you. The interior of the cabin was lined with bookshelves overflowing with volumes in multiple languages. One wall was covered with maps, some geographical, others depicting what appeared to be star charts or celestial configurations. A large table dominated the center of the room, its surface scattered with open books, handwritten notes, and curious objects, crystals, feathers, small carved figurines. Sit, please. Ilara gestured to chairs arranged near a small wood stove. You must have questions. About 1 million, Liam admitted, taking a seat while his eyes scanned the unusual surroundings. Maya settled beside him, drawn to a particular map on the wall, one that showed not countries or continents but swirling patterns of light and shadow across what seemed to be multiple overlapping planes. What is that? She asked, pointing to the map. Ilara followed her gaze. My attempt to visualize what I've studied my entire academic career, the intersection of different realities. What some traditions call the spiritual realm, others the astral plane, others still the quantum field. She smiled slightly at their expressions. Different languages for the same fundamental truth, that what we perceive with our 5 senses is merely one layer of a much more complex reality. And the light revealed these other layers? Maya asked. Not quite. Ilara moved to the table, shifting books to uncover a sketch that resembled the strange black orb they had encountered in the church basement. The light didn't reveal them so much as tear down the protective barriers between them. Imagine a series of rooms separated by walls. The walls don't create the rooms, they simply keep each space distinct, functional, safe. Remove the walls suddenly, and chaos ensues. The whispers, Liam said, understanding dawning in his eyes. They are coming from whatever exists in these other rooms. Ilara nodded. Exactly. Entities that have always been aware of us, but were limited in their ability to interact with our reality. The light removed those limitations. But why? Maya asked, the central question that had haunted her since the beginning. Why would this happen? What caused the light? A shadow passed over Ilara's features. That's the question, isn't it? Was it natural or artificial, random or deliberate, an accident or an attack? She sighed, suddenly looking every one of her years. I don't know for certain, but I have a theory. She carefully opened an ancient-looking book, its pages covered with text in a language Maya didn't recognize, and intricate illustrations of beings both beautiful and terrifying. Throughout human history, there have been accounts of beings who exist in these other realms attempting to break through, to establish footholds in our reality. Some traditions call them fallen angels, others demons, others extra-dimensional entities. Her finger traced an illustration of a radiant being whose beauty was somehow terrible to behold. They've always been limited by the veil, able to influence but not fully manifest. So the light was, what, their attempt to tear down the veil completely? Liam asked. I believe so, Ilara confirmed, but they couldn't do it alone. They needed help from our side. Human help, Maya said, the pieces connecting in her mind. Someone or something that would assist them in breaking through. Ilara's eyes met hers with approval. Precisely. The texts speak of vessels and gateways, humans who willingly surrender their agency to these entities, allowing them to establish stronger connections to our reality. The others, Liam breathed. They are not just changed, they are possessed? In a manner of speaking, yes, Ilara said, though not in the dramatic, Hollywood sense. It's more like a gradual surrender of human will and identity, creating space for something else to inhabit that consciousness. A chill ran through Maya as she recalled the whispers, their seductive promises of transcendence and evolution. They make it sound desirable, she said, like you're becoming something greater, not losing yourself. The most dangerous deceptions always contain elements of truth, Pastor Thomas interjected gently. There is transcendence available to humanity, but not by surrendering our essential nature, rather, by fulfilling it through communion with our Creator. Ilara nodded. The entities offering this false transcendence require human surrender to fully manifest in our reality. But there are other forces at work as well, what some would call divine intervention. She turned to Maya. You mentioned experiencing a competing voice against the whispers, a different kind of guidance? Maya nodded, surprised. How did you know? Because others have reported the same experience. Those who resist the whispers often describe another presence, quieter, gentler, but ultimately stronger, a light within that helps them recognize the deception of the false light without. So we're caught in the middle of a spiritual battle, Liam said, the skepticism in his voice giving way to reluctant acceptance of this framework that explained their experiences better than any scientific theory could. We always have been, Pastor Thomas said simply. The difference now is that the battle has become visible, tangible. The veil has thinned to near transparency. Ilara returned to the map on the wall, tracing one of the swirling patterns with her finger. There's something else you should know. The black orbs you encountered, they are anchors, tethering points where the connection between realities is strongest. They are being placed systematically across the landscape, strengthening the entity's hold on our world. Like an invasion, Liam murmured. Exactly like an invasion, Ilara agreed grimly. And if enough of these anchors are established, the breaching of the veil will become permanent. The transformation of our reality will be complete. Maya felt the weight of this knowledge settle over her like a physical burden. So what do we do? How do we fight this? Pastor Thomas and Ilara exchanged a meaningful glance before the older woman answered. We've been gathering people like you, those who can perceive the truth, who resist the whispers. We believe there's a way to repair the veil, to restore the separation between realities. She hesitated, then continued more softly. But it requires finding the source of the original light, the epicenter of the breach. And where is that? Liam asked. According to our calculations and the reports we've gathered, Ilara said, moving to another map, this one of their region, and pointing to a location marked with a red X, it's here. The old Northwood Research Facility, about 40 miles north of Cedar Springs. Maya felt a jolt of recognition. I know that place. It was some kind of government installation, closed to the public. There were always rumors about what they were doing there. Those rumors may have had more truth than anyone realized, Pastor Thomas said gravely. We believe experiments were being conducted there, attempts to penetrate the veil scientifically, to access these other realities for various purposes. And they succeeded, Liam concluded, his expression hardening. They tore open the veil. Perhaps not intentionally, Ilara qualified. They may have been manipulated by the very entities they were attempting to study. Hubris often precedes catastrophe. So we go to this facility, Maya said, determination rising within her. We find the breach and what? How do we repair something like this? Ilara's ancient eyes held hers. That's where faith becomes essential. The texts speak of living vessels of divine light, humans who carry within them the counterforce to the invading darkness. They can seal the breach, but only by offering themselves as the mortar in the wall, so to speak. A sacrifice, Liam translated bluntly. A willing gift, Pastor Thomas corrected gently. Like all true acts of love. Maya felt a tremor pass through her body, not fear exactly, but a profound awareness of standing at a threshold. The dream of her grandmother returned to her mind: two paths, two possible futures. One of surrender to the false light, one of sacrifice for the true light. How do we know if we're these vessels? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The divine light speaks within you, Ilara said. It resonates with the truth, guides you toward what is right and good, even when that path is difficult. She smiled slightly. You've already been experiencing it, have you not? The counter-melody to the whispers? Maya nodded slowly, remembering the quiet voice that had sustained her in her darkest moments, not with grand promises of transcendence, but with simple truths about love, sacrifice, and endurance. Then you already have your answer, Ilara said softly. The question is, what will you do with it? As night fell outside the cabin, Maya and Liam remained with Ilara and Pastor Thomas, learning more about the nature of the breach, the spreading influence of the others, and the small but growing resistance forming among those who maintained their humanity. The path ahead was dangerous, uncertain, and likely sacrificial, but for the first time since the shift, it was illuminated by a purpose greater than mere survival. In the darkness beyond Haven Chapel, the whispers continued, seeking entry, offering false salvation. But within, a different kind of light burned, not the blinding flash that had torn reality asunder, but the quiet, enduring flame of human hearts united in faith, hope, and love. And for that night at least, it was enough to keep the darkness at bay. Part 3: The Sacrifice. Chapter 6: Beyond the Known. See through the veil of deception, like a diamond revealing light, cut through the darkness surrounding, with truth that's pure and bright. See beyond empty promises, through the void of eternal night. Set your course with faith and courage, through temporal seas of fright. The journey to Northwood Research Facility would not be easy. In the week following their arrival at Haven Chapel, Maya and Liam helped prepare for the expedition, gathering supplies, studying Ilara's maps, and training with the small group of volunteers who would accompany them. The others had grown more organized, establishing patrols along major roads and around significant population centers. Their inhuman senses seemed attuned to human presence, particularly to those who actively resisted the whispers. This meant traveling by night, avoiding open areas, and maintaining near-constant vigilance. On the evening before their departure, Maya found herself drawn to the small cemetery behind the chapel. Simple wooden crosses marked the final resting places of longtime residents and, more recently, several refugees who had arrived too injured or exhausted to recover. She stood quietly among them, watching as the sun dipped below the western mountains, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. "I thought I might find you here," said a voice behind her. She turned to see Pastor Thomas approaching, his tall figure silhouetted against the twilight. In his hands, he carried something wrapped in cloth. "Just needed some quiet," Maya explained. "To think, to pray, to be sure about tomorrow." He nodded understanding, coming to stand beside her. "Doubt is not the enemy of faith, you know. Often it's the pathway to a deeper, more authentic belief." His gaze swept over the modest graves. Every one of these souls faced their own doubts, their own dark nights, yet they persevered. "I'm afraid," Maya admitted, the words feeling both difficult and freeing. "Not just of failing or dying, but of not being enough. What if I'm not what Ilara thinks I am? What if I can't do what needs to be done?" Pastor Thomas was quiet for a moment before responding. "There's a story in the Old Testament about Gideon, a man called by God to save his people from oppressors. When the angel appeared to him, Gideon was hiding, threshing wheat in a winepress out of fear. His first response was, How can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest, and I am the least in my family. He smiled gently. Yet God chose him precisely because of his weakness, not in spite of it. Power is made perfect in weakness, Maya. It's in our brokenness, our insufficiency, that divine strength can work most visibly. I'm not sure I even believe all this, she confessed. Not fully. I want to, but faith isn't certainty, he countered. It's trust despite uncertainty. It's taking the next step when you can't see the entire path. He held out the cloth-wrapped object. I brought something for you. Maya took it carefully, unfolding the soft fabric to reveal a small, silver cross on a chain, similar to her grandmother's but distinct in its details. It belonged to my wife, Pastor Thomas explained. Before she passed 5 years ago, she wore it through her own battles, cancer, the loss of our son, countless moments of doubt and pain. But she never surrendered to despair. Maya was deeply touched by the gesture. I can't take this, it's too precious. Which is precisely why you should have it, he insisted gently. Not as a talisman or good luck charm, but as a reminder that you're part of something larger than yourself. A great cloud of witnesses who have faced darkness with the light of faith. Moved beyond words, Maya slipped the chain over her head, feeling the weight of the cross settle against her collarbone, not a burden but a connection, an anchor to something eternal. Thank you, she whispered. Pastor Thomas nodded, his eyes kind but serious. The path you face tomorrow is difficult, perhaps impossible by human standards. But remember, the light you carry within is not your own. It never was. You are simply its vessel, its witness. He placed a weathered hand on her shoulder. Be brave, Maya, not because you are sufficient, but because he is. As darkness settled over the valley, they walked back to the chapel together, the first stars appearing overhead like distant beacons. Inside, the final preparations for tomorrow's journey were underway, weapons being cleaned and loaded, supplies distributed, routes reviewed one last time. Liam looked up as Maya entered, immediately noting the new cross at her neck. Something in his expression shifted, a softening, a recognition of her choice to embrace faith despite uncertainty. Ready for tomorrow? He asked as she took a seat beside him at the planning table. Maya touched the cross briefly, then nodded. As ready as I can be. Ilara spread out her most detailed map of the area surrounding the research facility. We've received reports from our scouts, she said, her voice low but clear. The facility is heavily guarded, not by human security forces, but by the others. They've established a perimeter approximately 2 miles out, with the highest concentration near this access road. She pointed to a winding path leading to the main entrance. So we don't use the road, concluded Rivera, a former park ranger with intimate knowledge of the terrain. We approach from the north, through the old quarry. It's rougher going, but there's more cover. What about these? Liam asked, indicating several small black dots Ilara had marked on the map in a circular pattern around the facility. Anchors, she confirmed grimly. 7 of them, positioned to create a kind of amplification field. They are strengthening the breach, widening it. Can we destroy them? Asked Chen, a soft-spoken man who had once been a demolitions expert with the Army Corps of Engineers. Ilara shook her head. Not directly. They exist partially in our reality and partially in the other. Conventional weapons would have minimal effect. But if we seal the primary breach, Maya said, recalling their earlier discussions, the anchors would lose their power source. Theoretically, yes, Ilara agreed, but getting to the breach means penetrating the heart of the facility and facing whatever guards it. The group fell silent, contemplating the enormity of the task before them. 10 people against an enemy that defied conventional understanding, wielding powers beyond normal human experience. The odds were not in their favor. We should all get some rest, Pastor Thomas finally said, breaking the tense silence. Tomorrow will demand everything we have to give. As the group dispersed, Maya found herself unable to sleep despite her exhaustion. The whispers, which had receded somewhat within the protective community of Haven Chapel, seemed stronger tonight, more insistent, as if aware of their plans and determined to derail them. She slipped outside, seeking the clarity of the night air. The moon had risen, nearly full, casting silver light across the clearing. In its illumination, she noticed Liam sitting alone on a fallen log at the edge of the trees, his posture conveying the same restlessness she felt. Can't sleep either? She asked, approaching quietly. He looked up, a fleeting smile crossing his features. Too much going through my mind. He moved slightly, making space for her on the log, remembering everything that led to this moment, wondering how different things might have been if I'd made other choices. Maya sat beside him, conscious of the small distance between them, physical and otherwise. Despite all they had experienced together, Liam remained somewhat enigmatic, revealing little of his life before the shift. What kind of choices? She asked gently. He was silent for so long she thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of long-held regret. I told you I was a mechanic before all this. That was true, but not the whole truth. He stared out into the darkness. I was also involved in less legitimate activities. Nothing violent. I never hurt anyone, but I moved things for people who did. Parts that fell off trucks, cars with questionable paperwork, sometimes other cargo I didn't ask questions about. You were surviving, Maya said, not judging. I was taking the easy way, he corrected. I had opportunities to make different choices, people who tried to help me find a better path. But I was too proud, too angry at the world for dealing me a rough hand. His fingers interlaced, knuckles white with tension. When the light came, my first thought wasn't about what was happening to the world. It was that I was being punished, that whatever force was behind this had come specifically for people like me. You don't still believe that, do you? Maya asked, surprised by this revelation. Liam looked at her directly, moonlight reflecting in his dark eyes. What I believe is that I've been given a second chance, not to erase my past, but to choose differently now that I understand what's truly at stake. He hesitated, then added softly, watching you find your faith again. It's helped me see that redemption isn't just a nice idea. It's possible, real. Maya felt a warmth bloom in her chest despite the chill of the night. Pastor Thomas told me something this evening. He said faith isn't certainty, it's trust despite uncertainty. It's taking the next step when you can't see the entire path. I like that, Liam admitted, because I don't have certainty about anything anymore, except that surrender to those whispers means losing everything that matters. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the moon's slow progress across the star-strewn sky. Tomorrow they would journey toward what might be the end of their story, or perhaps, if they succeeded, the beginning of a new chapter for humanity. Either way, they would face it not as the frightened refugees who had fled Cedar Springs, but as something more, vessels of light in a world overwhelmed by darkness. Watch this story unfold before your eyes. Let go of everything you thought you knew. In a land where freedom was promised true, we learn to see with hearts made new. Don't let your spirit break or your hope decay. The time has come to find another way. Can you feel truth beating in your core? Do you see light where there was dark before? Do you now understand what you're fighting for? Chapter 7: The Final Confrontation. The past is filled with sorrow, the future shrouded in night, our destination uncertain, as we journey toward the light. They say the end approaches quickly. I send my love with all my might. The pain cuts deep within my heart. Was it something I failed to see right? I look toward heaven's promise, and see redemption's crimson sign. That look of hope within your eyes makes me believe we'll be fine. The cleansing light surrounds me, makes me whole once more. The mercy of our Savior opens heaven's door. Dawn broke with somber clarity as the expedition prepared to depart. 10 volunteers had committed to the journey. Maya and Liam Ilara, who insisted her knowledge was too valuable to leave behind. Rivera, the ranger. Chen, the demolitions expert. Dr. Abrams, a neurologist who had studied the others' behavior patterns. The Santiago siblings, Marcos and Isabel, both former search and rescue personnel. Cooper, who had been a police officer before the shift, and surprisingly, Pastor Thomas, who quietly but firmly overruled objections about his age. My place is with you, was all he said, ending the discussion. They traveled in 2 groups, maintaining radio contact but separated enough that if one group was discovered, the other might remain undetected. Maya went with Ilara, Pastor Thomas, Rivera, and Chen, while Liam led the second group with the Santiagos, Cooper, and Dr. Abrams. The first day passed without incident as they moved through increasingly rugged terrain, avoiding roads and open areas. By nightfall, they had reached the foothills that would eventually lead them to the quarry, their planned approach to the facility. As darkness fell, they made camp in a sheltered ravine, keeping watch in rotating shifts. Maya volunteered for the first watch alongside Rivera, whose quiet competence and intimate knowledge of the wilderness had proven invaluable. You grew up around here? She asked as they found positions with good sightlines to the surrounding forest. Rivera nodded, his weathered face thoughtful in the dim starlight. Born and raised. 5 generations of my family have lived in these mountains. He gestured toward a distant peak. My grandfather took me hunting on that ridge when I was 12, taught me to read the land, to understand its rhythms. It must be hard, Maya said softly, seeing it all changed like this. Changed but not destroyed, he corrected. The land endures. It's witnessed worse than this over the millennia. You really believe we can fix this? Repair the veil? Rivera was silent for a long moment before answering. I've spent my life in these forests. I've seen things most people wouldn't believe, lights on the ridges that couldn't be explained, moments when time seemed to flow differently, places where the boundary between worlds felt thinner. He adjusted his rifle, checking the sightlines. Long before the shift, I knew there was more to reality than what we perceive with our ordinary senses. So yes, I believe the veil can be repaired because I believe it exists in the first place. His quiet confidence was reassuring. Maya settled into her watch position, scanning the darkness for any sign of movement, any hint of the others. The whispers were stronger here, outside the protective community of Haven Chapel, but she found them easier to resist now, not because they were less persuasive, but because she recognized them for what they were. The night passed slowly, each watch team reporting nothing unusual. When dawn arrived, they continued their journey, moving deeper into the foothills, following game trails and dry creek beds to avoid leaving obvious tracks. By midday, they had reached a vantage point that offered their first distant view of the Northwood Research Facility, a complex of low, grey buildings surrounded by a perimeter fence, nestled in a valley between two rugged ridges. Even from this distance, something about it seemed wrong. The air around it appeared to shimmer slightly, like heat rising from asphalt, though the day was cool. The breach is affecting the physical properties of the surrounding area, Ilara explained as they observed through binoculars. The laws of nature become flexible near such intersections of realities. There's movement along the perimeter, Cooper reported, his trained eye picking out details others might miss. Regular patrols, but not military standard. They are moving too fluidly. Others, Dr. Abrams confirmed, their motor patterns are distinctive, more efficient than normal human movement, unconstrained by natural biomechanical limitations. How many? Liam asked. Cooper scanned methodically. At least 20 visible from this angle, probably more on the far side or inside the complex. They retreated to plan the final approach. The quarry lay about 3 miles ahead, an abandoned excavation site that would provide cover for their approach to the facility's northern boundary, where security appeared lightest. We'll reach the quarry by nightfall, Rivera calculated. Rest there until midnight, then make our final approach under darkness. The breach will be at the center of the facility, Ilara added, consulting her notes. Likely underground, in a reinforced chamber. That's where the scientists would have conducted their experiments, where the initial tear in the veil occurred. And that's where we need to get to seal it, Maya said, the weight of their mission settling over her anew. Ilara nodded, her ancient eye serious. Yes, but remember, the closer we get to the breach, the stronger the opposing forces will become. The whispers will intensify, the manipulation more difficult to resist. We must stay vigilant, stay connected to the true light. They continued their journey with renewed purpose, each step bringing them closer to the confrontation that would determine not just their fate, but potentially the fate of all humanity. As they traveled, Maya found herself watching Liam, his careful movements, his attentiveness to others, the quiet strength that had emerged from what he had once considered weakness. He had changed profoundly since their escape from Cedar Springs, as had she. Whatever happened at Northwood, they were not the same people who had fled the diner that day. The quarry, when they reached it at dusk, proved ideal for their needs. A massive excavation with high rock walls that shielded them from view, numerous caves and crevices offering shelter, and a clear path leading toward the facility about a mile away. As the others prepared a cold camp and reviewed the final details of their plan, Maya found a secluded spot near a small pool of water collected at the quarry's base. The still surface reflected the emerging stars like a mirror, creating the illusion of infinity, as if one could step through into another cosmos. She knelt beside it, studying her own reflection, a face both familiar and strange. The past weeks had changed her, stripping away superficial concerns and revealing a core of resilience she hadn't known she possessed. The cross-pastor Thomas had given her gleamed at her throat, catching starlight. "Mind if I join you?" Liam's voice was soft behind her. She nodded, and he settled beside her, both of them gazing into the reflective pool. "In a few hours, we'll be inside that facility," he said, facing whatever guards the breach. "Are you afraid?" she asked. Terrified, he admitted without hesitation, but not paralyzed by it anymore. "It's like, the fear is still there, but it doesn't get to decide what I do." He glanced at her. "You've helped me see that." "Me?" Maya was surprised. "I've been scared this whole time." "Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's moving forward despite it." He smiled slightly. "Something Pastor Thomas said that actually made sense to me." Maya returned the smile, grateful for this moment of connection before whatever awaited them. "I was thinking about how everything has changed. The world, Yes, but us too. Sometimes I barely recognize myself. In a good way, I hope. Mostly, she acknowledged. I feel more real somehow, like layers of artifice have been stripped away. She hesitated, then added, my grandmother used to talk about refinement, how precious metals have to pass through fire to be purified. I never really understood what she meant until now. Liam was quiet for a moment, considering this. If we succeed, if we seal the breach and restore the veil, do you think things will go back to how they were? The world, I mean. Maya studied the stars reflected in the water. No, she said finally. I don't think we can see what we've seen or know what we've learned. And maybe we shouldn't. Maybe the veil was too thick before, making it too easy to ignore the spiritual realities that surround us. A middle ground, Liam suggested. Neither completely veiled nor completely exposed, but aware, conscious. Exactly. Maya felt a surge of warmth toward him, this man who had started as a reluctant companion and become something much more important. A friend, a partner, perhaps. Her thoughts were interrupted by Rivera's approach, his expression grave. It's time, he said simply. Final briefing in 5 minutes. The group gathered in a tight circle, speaking in hushed tones despite their relative safety. The plan was straightforward out of necessity. Complexity increased the likelihood of failure. They would approach in 2 teams from different angles, neutralize perimeter security as quietly as possible, enter the facility, locate the breach, and here things became less certain. Once we locate the breach, Ilara explained, those with the strongest connection to the divine light, Maya, Pastor Thomas, and myself, will attempt the sealing ritual described in the ancient texts. The rest of you will need to defend us during this process, as the entities will certainly resist. How long will the ritual take? Cooper asked, ever the practical tactician. That depends on the size and nature of the breach, Ilara admitted. Minutes, perhaps, or longer. We'll give you whatever time you need, Liam promised, his eyes meeting Maya's with quiet intensity. Final preparations were made in silence, weapons checked, communications tested, emergency rendezvous points confirmed. Before they departed, Pastor Thomas gathered them in a circle, joining hands for a final prayer. Lord of Light, we come before you in this dark hour, seeking your guidance and protection. We do not know what awaits us, but we trust in your provision and your purpose. Grant us courage, clarity, and compassion. Let your light shine through us, dispelling darkness and restoring what has been broken. If sacrifice is required, let it be given freely, in love rather than fear. In the name of all that is holy, all that is true, all that endures beyond time and space, we pray. Amen. Amen, the group echoed softly. Then, under the cover of darkness, they moved toward the facility, toward the breach, toward their destiny, toward the final confrontation between light and shadow. The white light washes over me, cleanses me completely. The mercy of our loving God. Something you've never seen. Chapter 8 The White Wash. The approach to Northwood Research Facility proved more challenging than anticipated. The distortion of reality around the breach intensified as they drew closer, subtle at first, then increasingly disorienting. Distances seemed to expand and contract unpredictably. Sounds were muffled or strangely amplified. Even gravity felt inconsistent, making each step require conscious attention. The veil isn't just torn here, Ilara whispered as they paused behind an outcropping of rock about 500 yards from the perimeter fence. It's shredded, allowing aspects of other realities to bleed through. Maya felt it most acutely in the whispers, which had transformed from seductive suggestions to a near-constant barrage of promises, threats, and disorienting half-truths. She noticed the others struggling as well, faces tightening with concentration, occasional shakes of the head as if to dislodge unwelcome thoughts. Stay focused on the present moment, Pastor Thomas advised, his voice steady despite the strain evident in his eyes. On your immediate surroundings, on your physical sensations. It helps ground you in this reality. Following the original plan, they separated into 2 teams. Maya went with Ilara, Pastor Thomas, and Chen toward the north entrance, while Liam led the others toward a service road on the eastern perimeter. Before parting, Maya and Liam exchanged a brief, intense look, volumes communicated without words. Be careful, she whispered. You too, he replied. Remember, whatever happens, it was worth it. The perimeter security proved to be a disturbing hybrid of technology and something else. The chain-link fence hummed with electricity, but the current fluctuated in patterns that seemed almost intelligent. The cameras swiveled not on programmed rotations but with the uncanny precision of predators tracking prey. And the others who patrolled, human in form but moving with liquid grace, heads occasionally tilting at impossible angles as they surveyed their surroundings. Chen, applying his expertise, identified a point where the fence's power supply could be temporarily disrupted, a junction box partially concealed behind overgrown vegetation. While Ilara and Pastor Thomas maintained watch, he worked methodically, his hands steady despite the whispers that Maya could see were affecting him deeply. Almost, he murmured, sweat beading on his forehead. There. A section of fence went dark, the humming ceasing. Maya used insulated cutters to create an opening just large enough to slip through, and one by one, they entered the facility grounds, staying low and using the scattered equipment and storage containers as cover. The main building loomed before them, a sprawling concrete structure, brutally utilitarian in design, with few windows and multiple security doors. According to the schematics Ilara had somehow obtained, the primary research areas were underground, accessible via elevators and stairwells near the center of the complex. Maya's radio emitted 3 soft clicks, the signal that Liam's team had also breached the perimeter successfully. The plan was proceeding, though Maya's stomach knotted with the knowledge that this was likely the easiest part of their mission. An unnatural stillness pervaded the facility grounds. No wind, no ambient sounds of nature, just the occasional footsteps of patrolling others and the distant, rhythmic hum emanating from somewhere deep within the main building. That sound, Pastor Thomas whispered, his expression troubled. It's the breach. Yes, Ilara confirmed grimly. It's larger than I feared. We need to hurry. They made their way toward a service entrance where the schematics indicated less security. Chen worked his magic again, bypassing the electronic lock with efficient precision. The door opened with a soft hiss, revealing a dimly lit corridor that seemed to stretch and walk before their eyes, another effect of the breach's influence on local reality. Maya activated her radio. Team 1 is in, proceeding to Rendezvous Point Alpha. 3 clicks responded, Liam's team acknowledged. They moved through the corridors cautiously, following Ilara's memorized route toward the central elevator hub. The interior of the facility was eerily empty, no scientists, no security personnel, just occasional others standing motionless in strange, sentinel-like positions, their eyes gleaming with unnatural light. They are not fully present in our reality, Ilara explained in a barely audible whisper. They exist simultaneously in multiple planes. It makes them stronger but also distributed, less aware of subtle stimuli in any single reality. This proved true as they managed to navigate past several of the sentinels by moving extremely slowly, their breathing controlled, their steps deliberately placed to minimize sound. Maya felt as though they were ghosts themselves, insubstantial shadows slipping through a world that was becoming increasingly unreal. The central hub contained 4 elevators and a stairwell, all requiring security clearance. While Chen worked on bypassing the systems, Maya's radio crackled with Liam's voice, unnaturally tense. Team 2 encountering resistance. Proceed without us. We'll create a diversion. Before she could respond, the sound of an alarm blared through the facility, harsh, discordant tones that seemed to penetrate directly into her brain. The previously motionless others throughout the building suddenly animated, moving with terrifying speed toward the source of the disturbance. Liam's drawing them away, Pastor Thomas realized. We need to move now. Chen had the elevator operational moments later, and they descended into the depths of the facility, toward the breach, toward whatever end awaited them. Maya's heart pounded with fear for Liam and the others, but she forced herself to focus on their mission. Their sacrifice would be meaningless if the breach remained open. The elevator deposited them in a vast underground chamber that had clearly been designed as a control center. Banks of sophisticated equipment lined the walls, monitoring stations arranged in concentric circles around a central area separated by thick glass, or something that resembled glass but rippled occasionally like the surface of water. Beyond that barrier lay the breach itself. Maya's mind struggled to process what she was seeing. It wasn't simply a tear or a hole, it was a place where reality itself folded and inverted, where dimensions intersected in ways that human perception was never designed to comprehend. Colors existed there that had no names, geometries that contradicted the basic principles of mathematics. At its center was a pulsing light, not the pure white radiance of the original shift, but something corrupted, something that had once been light but had been twisted into a parody of illumination. The gateway, Ilara breathed, her ancient eyes wide with a mixture of horror and fascination. They actually succeeded in creating a permanent intersection between realities. Not permanent yet, Pastor Thomas reminded her grimly, but close to it. The anchors we observed from outside are nearly fully energized. Chen moved to one of the control stations, quickly assessing the systems. These are monitoring the breach, not controlling it, he reported. Whatever started this, they lost control of it almost immediately. As expected, Ilara said. They opened a door they couldn't close, invited in entities they couldn't control. She removed from her pack an ancient leather-bound book, the same one she had shown them at her cabin. We need to reach the central chamber. The security seems disabled, Chen noted, examining the door controls. Like someone left in a hurry, or was taken, Maya suggested quietly, noticing dark stains on the floor that looked disturbingly like dried blood. The door to the central chamber opened with a pneumatic hiss, releasing a wave of energy that made Maya's skin prickle and her vision blur momentarily. The whispers intensified to an almost unbearable degree, no longer separate voices but a unified chorus promising power, transcendence, and liberation from human limitations. Join us, evolve, transcend. Why remain trapped in flesh when infinity awaits? Maya clutched Pastor Thomas's cross, focusing on its solid reality, on the faith it represented. Not today, she whispered to the voices. Not ever. They entered the chamber cautiously. Up close, the breach was even more incomprehensible, a wound in reality that pulsed with corrupted light, surrounding a central pillar of technology fused with something organic, something that shouldn't exist in their world. The air itself seemed to resist their presence, growing thick and difficult to breathe. Ilara opened her book with trembling hands, finding pages covered with symbols that seemed to move and rearrange themselves as Maya watched. We need to form a triangle, she instructed. Maya, Pastor Thomas, stand there and there. I'll complete the formation here. They positioned themselves as directed, creating a perfect triangle around the breach. Ilara began to recite words in a language Maya didn't recognize, something ancient, something that resonated with power and authority. Pastor Thomas joined in, his deep voice harmonizing with Ilara's in perfect counterpoint. Maya hesitated, uncertain of her role until Pastor Thomas nodded encouragingly. From your heart, he called during a pause in the recitation. The words will come, and remarkably, they did. As Maya opened herself to the light she had felt growing within her since their journey began, words formed in her mind and flowed from her lips, not in the unknown ancient language of the others, but in simple, heartfelt English. I stand as a vessel of light, a witness to truth, a defender of the veil that separates and protects. By the power of love that transcends all realities, by the sacrifice freely given, by the mercy that redeems and restores, I call for healing of what has been torn, for restoration of what has been corrupted. As the three voices joined, ancient wisdom, faithful experience, and sincere new belief, something extraordinary happened. The cross at Maya's throat began to glow with a pure, white light that was fundamentally different from the corrupted radiance of the breach. It spread outward, enveloping her in warmth and clarity, then extending to connect with similar auras forming around Ilara and Pastor Thomas. The triangular formation became a conduit for this true light, focusing it toward the breach. Where it touched the corrupted energy, a reaction occurred, like oil and water separating, like order emerging from chaos. The breach began to contract, its edges becoming more defined, more stable. But the entities on the other side fought back. The whispers transformed into screams of rage and desperation. The very air seemed to solidify, pressing against the three humans with crushing force. Objects around the chamber, tools, equipment, even fragments of the floor and walls, lifted into the air and hurled themselves toward them. Chen, standing guard near the entrance, did what he could to deflect the larger projectiles, but was soon overwhelmed. A flying shard of metal struck his shoulder, drawing blood. Another caught his temple, and he collapsed to the floor, conscious but unable to continue defending them. We need more power, Ilara gasped, her elderly frame trembling with the effort of maintaining the ritual. The breach is resisting closure. Maya felt it too, the initial progress slowing, the corrupted energy regrouping, pushing back against their efforts. They were weakening while the breach remained strong. In that moment of near despair, the chamber door burst open. Liam staggered in, blooded but upright, supporting Pastor Thomas who had been struck by debris. Behind him came Rivera and Isabel Santiago, both showing signs of fierce combat. The others? Maya asked, her voice strained as she maintained her position in the triangle. Creating a perimeter, Liam responded grimly. Buying us time. His eyes took in the situation quickly. What do you need? More vessels of light, Ilara replied. More willing hearts to complete the seal. Without hesitation, Liam stepped forward, joining his hand with Maya's. Rivera and Isabel similarly positioned themselves, extending the formation from a triangle to a more complex geometric pattern that somehow directly countered the chaotic mathematics of the breach. I don't know the words, Liam admitted. Speak your truth, Pastor Thomas encouraged through pain-clenched teeth. Your commitment to the light. Liam took a deep breath, his eyes meeting Maya's. "I stand here willingly. I've lived in darkness, made my home there, convinced it was all I deserved. But I've seen another way, through you, through all of you. If my life or death can help seal this breach, can help restore what's been broken, I offer it freely." Rivera and Isabel added their own declarations, simple, heartfelt commitments to stand against the darkness, to serve as vessels for the light. As each voice joined the chorus, the power flowing through them intensified, the pure white radiance expanding, strengthening, pushing back against the corrupted energy of the breach. The entities fought with increasing desperation, manifesting partially into the physical world, shadowy appendages, grotesque approximations of human limbs, faces that shifted and flowed like liquid, eyes that burned with ancient malevolence. They clawed at the barrier of light, seeking weaknesses, vulnerabilities. One such manifestation reached for Maya, its touch like ice burning into her soul. She cried out in pain, but held her position, her commitment unwavering. Liam immediately moved to shield her, placing himself between her and the entity. "Not her," he said with quiet determination. "Not today." The entity recoiled from his intervention, shrieking in a frequency that made blood run from their ears. But the momentary disruption in their formation had consequences. The breach pulsed, expanding suddenly, releasing a wave of corrupted energy that knocked them all to the ground. Maya struggled to her feet, seeing the others similarly dazed. The breach was growing again, the entities pressing their advantage. Ilara lay motionless, whether unconscious or worse, Maya couldn't tell. Pastor Thomas was on his knees, still murmuring the ancient words but clearly fading. "We're losing," Liam gasped, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. "There are too few of us, and they are too strong." In that moment of apparent defeat, Maya remembered what Ilara had told them about the sealing ritual, that it would require a willing gift, a sacrifice of love. She understood then what she had to do. Rising to her feet, she moved directly toward the breach, ignoring Liam's shout of alarm. The cross at her throat blazed with light as she approached the corrupted energy, its pure radiance creating a small sphere of protection around her. "Maya, don't," Liam called, struggling to reach her. "There has to be another way." She turned to him briefly, her face serene despite the chaos surrounding them. "It's okay, Liam, I understand now. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends." She smiled gently. "For the world." Before he could stop her, she stepped directly into the breach, the cross held before her like a shield. The moment she crossed the threshold, an extraordinary transformation occurred. The corrupted light parted before the pure radiance emanating from her, from the cross, from her willing sacrifice. The white light expanded exponentially, washing through the breach like a cleansing flood. "The white light washes over me, cleanses me completely. The mercy of our loving God. Something all will see." Maya felt no pain, only a profound sense of purpose and peace as her physical form dissolved, becoming one with the pure light. Her consciousness expanded beyond the limitations of her body, beyond the constraints of single-dimensional thinking. She saw the breach from both sides, from all sides, understanding at last the full nature of what had happened and what was needed to restore balance. The entities fled before this transformation, retreating back to their own realities as the white light, the white wash, sealed the breach behind them. The corrupted energy was purified, the tear in the veil mended not with force but with willing sacrifice, with love made manifest. In the chamber, Liam and the others watched in awe as the breach contracted, the chaotic energies replaced by pure white light that gradually faded until only a faint shimmer remained, like sunlight on water, beautiful but no longer dangerous. Where Maya had stood, there was nothing, no body, no physical remains, but something of her presence lingered, a warmth and peace that enveloped them all. Her sacrifice had not been an ending but a transformation, a transcendence of the true kind, not the false evolution promised by the whispers, but the authentic elevation of a soul fulfilling its highest purpose. Pastor Thomas struggled to his feet, tears streaming down his face. "She sealed it," he whispered, "the willing sacrifice, the perfect love that casts out fear." Liam stood motionless, his eyes fixed on the space where Maya had been. His expression held grief, yes, but also something else, understanding, acceptance, and a quiet determination. "She's not gone," he said with unexpected certainty. "Not completely. I can still feel her." As if in confirmation, the cross that Maya had worn, Pastor Thomas's wife's cross, appeared on the floor where the breach had been, untarnished and glowing faintly with inner light. Liam picked it up carefully, feeling its warmth against his palm. "What now?" Rivera asked softly, helping Ilara to her feet as she regained consciousness. Pastor Thomas looked around at their battered group, then toward the surface where their companions awaited. Now we go back. We tell what happened here. We rebuild what was broken, heal what was wounded. His eyes met Liam's. We live in a way that honors her sacrifice. Liam closed his fingers around the cross, feeling its reassuring solidity. And we remember that the veil is thinner than we thought, that light and darkness, good and evil, are more real and more immediate than we ever imagined. That we are never alone, Lara added, her ancient eyes bright with unshed tears. That divine light is always available to those who seek it. As they made their slow, painful way back to the surface, the facility around them had changed, no longer distorted by the breach's influence, no longer patrolled by the others. Outside, they emerged into dawn breaking over the mountains, the sky washed clean by the night's rain, the air fresh and sweet. The world was not the same as before the shift, perhaps it never would be again. The veil had been torn and mended, leaving it thinner, more permeable to spiritual realities both light and dark. But humanity had been given another chance, another day to choose, to grow, to seek the light that Maya had embodied in her final, transformative act. Liam looked toward the rising sun, the cross warm against his chest where he now wore it. "Thank you," he whispered, his words carried on the morning breeze. "For everything." And somewhere, in a reality adjacent but connected to their own, Maya heard him, and smiled. "The white light washes over all, making everything new. The mercy of our loving God, shining pure and true. The echo of erasure, a symphony of fear and reclamation in the whitewashed world." In the Whitewash Gold edition, Tyson Jay Palmer crafts a compelling narrative that explores profound theological themes through the lens of a post-apocalyptic world altered by a mysterious event called the Shift. The story intricately weaves elements of the gospel, presenting a world grappling with the sudden revelation of a divine light and the subsequent struggle between good and evil. The book delves into the complexities of faith, the nature of spiritual warfare, and the ultimate sacrifice required to restore harmony to a broken world. The narrative begins with the arrival of the light, an event that immediately evokes biblical parallels. In the Christian tradition, light is frequently used to symbolize divine presence and revelation. The light in the book shares this symbolism, penetrating every shadow and illuminating every secret place. This mirrors the biblical concept of God's light exposing darkness and revealing truth. However, the book does not portray this light as an entirely benevolent force. While some characters experience it as beautiful and transcendent, others find it terrifying, highlighting the paradoxical nature of divine power as both gentle and powerful, much like the God of the Old Testament, who inspires both awe and fear. The immediate aftermath of the shift is marked by silence, a holy pause in the text, which can be interpreted as a moment of divine anticipation. This silence is soon broken by whispers and changes, introducing the central conflict of the narrative, a spiritual battle between those who align with the light and those who become the others. This conflict is a clear allegory for the Gospel's depiction of the ongoing struggle between good and evil, between the forces of God and those of darkness. The character's journey through this transformed world is a quest for meaning and understanding in the face of chaos. Maya's initial skepticism and eventual rediscovery of faith mirror the common gospel theme of doubt giving way to belief. Her journey is aided by the Bible and her grandmother's teachings, representing the importance of scripture and spiritual guidance in navigating a world filled with uncertainty. Liam, on the other hand, embodies the struggle of reconciling the tangible world with the unseen, a struggle many face when confronted with spiritual realities. A central theological element in the story is the concept of the veil between worlds. The shift tears this veil, allowing entities from other realms to interact with humanity. This concept has parallels in Gnostic traditions, which speak of hidden knowledge and the breaking of cosmic barriers. In the book, the whispers that tempt people to cross over to the other side represent a departure from human existence, promising a false form of transcendence. This is akin to the biblical warnings against false prophets and the allure of worldly power and knowledge that leads away from God. The narrative arc culminates in an act of sacrifice to restore the veil, echoing the central theme of the gospel's salvation through sacrifice. Maya's willingness to give herself is reminiscent of Jesus Christ's sacrifice, highlighting the power of self-giving love to overcome darkness. Through this sacrifice, the book suggests that true transcendence is found not in abandoning humanity or seeking forbidden knowledge, but in embracing the divine light within and choosing love. Moreover, the book explores themes of judgment and redemption. The shift acts as a catalyst, revealing the true nature of individuals and forcing them to confront their inner selves. The characters are faced with choices that determine their path, reflecting the gospel's emphasis on free will and the consequences of those choices. Those who surrender to the whispers lose their humanity, becoming vessels for an alien agenda, while those who resist, like Maya and Liam, are presented with the opportunity for spiritual growth and redemption. The ending of the book carries a message of hope and resilience. Even though Maya's sacrifice is a moment of profound loss, it leads to the restoration of balance and offers humanity a chance for a new beginning. The final image of the cross, glowing faintly with inner light, symbolizes the enduring power of divine love and the potential for humanity to rebuild and seek the light, even in the aftermath of great darkness. In conclusion, the Whitewashed Gold Edition is a rich theological allegory that uses a post-apocalyptic narrative to explore themes central to the gospel. It delves into the nature of divinity, the reality of spiritual warfare, the importance of faith, and the power of sacrifice and redemption. By presenting these themes through a science fiction lens, Palmer invites readers to reflect on the unseen forces that shape their reality and the choices they make in the face of the unknown, ultimately affirming the enduring power of love, hope, and the divine light.